Ethan's scream shattered the silence of the police station, raw and desperate, as handcuffs bit into his wrists. "I didn't do this," he pleaded, his voice cracking, but the officer's cold stares offered no mercy. The bag of cocaine, planted in his backpack, was the damning evidence that had turned his world upside down. He was only 22, a college junior with dreams of becoming a writer, now sitting in a dimly lit interrogation room in small-town Ohio. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on his pale face, his green eyes wide with fear. Ethan Harper had always known his conservative family disapproved of his choices, as they called his identity, but he never imagined they'd stoop to this. A betrayal so vile it threatened to destroy his life. His mind raced back to the night before. It was supposed to be a quiet evening at home, studying for finals. Caleb, his boyfriend of 6 months, had come over, their laughter filling Ethan's tiny apartment as they cooked dinner together. Caleb's warm smile, his gentle touch as he brushed a strand of dark hair from Ethan's face, had made the world feel safe. But safety was an illusion. Ethan's older brother, Mark, had stopped by unannounced, his expression unreadable. "Just checking in," Mark had said, lingering too long by Ethan's backpack. Hours later, the police were at his door, tipped off by an anonymous call. The interrogation room door swung open, and Detective Larson, a burly man with a graying mustache, tossed a file onto the table. "Your family's had a lot to say about you, kid," he grunted. "They claim you've been spiraling for months. Drugs, bad influences." He leaned in, his breath sour. "That boyfriend of yours, Caleb? They say he's the one who got you into this mess." Ethan's heart sank. His family, his parents, Mark, even his cousins, had never accepted that he was gay. Sunday dinners were a battlefield of passive-aggressive comments and pointed silences. His mother, Linda, would clutch her cross necklace and mutter about saving his soul. His father, Robert, a deacon at their church, had once told him, "You're no son of mine if you keep living like this." But framing him for drugs? This was a new low, even for them. "I'm not a dealer," Ethan said, his voice trembling but firm. "I don't even do drugs. Someone set me up." Larson smirked. "That's what they all say. We've got witnesses, Ethan. Your brother saw you with that bag. Your parents backed him up." Ethan's hands clenched into fists, the cuffs rattling. Mark, his own brother, the one who'd once taught him how to ride a bike, now testifying against him. The betrayal stung deeper than the cold metal on his wrists. He thought of Caleb, who was probably pacing their apartment, worried sick. Caleb, with his kind brown eyes and unshakable loyalty, didn't deserve to be dragged into this. As Larson droned on about evidence and charges, Ethan's mind wandered to his grandfather, Henry, the only family member who'd ever truly seen him. Henry Harper, a retired lawyer with a sharp mind and a gentle heart, had passed away a year ago. He'd been Ethan's confidant, the one who'd listened when Ethan came out at 16, who'd hugged him and said, "You're perfect as you are." Henry's death had left a void, but his memory was a flicker of hope in this nightmare. The detective's voice snapped Ethan back to reality. "You're looking at serious time, kid. Distribution's no joke. Unless you've got something to trade, I'd start thinking about how you're going to survive lockup." Ethan swallowed hard, his throat dry. He had nothing to trade, no names, no confessions, because he was innocent. But his family's lies were airtight, and the small town of Willow Creek wasn't exactly known for its progressive views. The weight of it all pressed down on him, threatening to crush his spirit. Hours later, they moved him to a holding cell. The clang of the bars echoed in his ears as he slumped onto the cot, staring at the cracked ceiling. He thought of Caleb's laugh, the way it lit up even the darkest days. He thought of his grandfather's warm voice, telling him to keep fighting no matter what. Ethan wasn't sure how, but he knew he couldn't give up. Not yet. The next morning, a guard appeared at his cell. "Harper, you've got a visitor." Ethan's heart leapt, hoping it was Caleb, but his stomach twisted at the thought it might be Mark or his parents, come to gloat. He shuffled down the hall, head bowed, until he saw a familiar face waiting in the visitation room. Not Caleb, but Margaret, his grandfather's old paralegal. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft but urgent. She was in her 60s, with silver hair pulled into a tight bun, her sharp eyes scanning him with concern. "I heard what happened. It's a damn travesty." "They're lying, Margaret," Ethan whispered, leaning forward. "My family, they did this because of who I am." She nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I know, and I'm here because of Henry." She slid a manila envelope across the table. "Your grandfather left something for you. Something his will kept under wraps until now." Ethan's hands trembled as he opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in Henry's elegant handwriting, along with legal documents. The letter began, "My dearest Ethan, if you're reading this, you're in trouble, and I'm not there to help. But I've left you a way out." As Ethan read on, his heart pounded. Henry had known his family's cruelty might one day target Ethan. The old man had planned for it, and his final act of love might just be Ethan's salvation. Ethan clutched the letter, his grandfather's words a lifeline in the sterile visitation room. Henry's handwriting was steady, each loop and curve a reminder of the man who'd believed in him when no one else did. The documents detailed a trust fund, hidden from the rest of the family, with a clause that could only be activated if Ethan faced unjust persecution. Margaret leaned closer, her voice low. "Henry was a smart man. He knew your parents and brother might try something like this. The trust includes funds for legal defense. But there's more. A letter he wrote to the county prosecutor outlining his suspicions about your family's intentions." Ethan's breath caught. He knew they'd do this. He suspected, Margaret said, her eyes narrowing. "Henry saw how they treated you after you came out. He didn't trust them, especially Mark. That letter could sway the prosecutor to dig deeper into the evidence." Ethan's mind spun. The trust fund was a fortune, enough to hire a top lawyer, maybe even clear his name. But the letter to the prosecutor was the real weapon. Henry had described Mark's history of manipulation, his parents' blind devotion to their church's dogma, and their refusal to accept Ethan's identity. It wasn't proof of the frame-up, but it was a start. "I need to get this to Caleb," Ethan said. "He'll know what to do." Margaret nodded. "I've already contacted a lawyer, Sarah Bennett. She's one of the best defense attorneys in Ohio, and she's ready to take your case. But you need to stay strong, Ethan. This fight's just beginning." As Margaret left, Ethan was escorted back to his cell, the envelope tucked under his arm like a shield. For the first time since his arrest, hope flickered in his chest. But it was fragile, easily snuffed out by the weight of his family's betrayal. That evening, Caleb finally visited. His brown eyes were red-rimmed, his usually neat blonde hair disheveled. He pressed his hand against the glass, separating them, and Ethan mirrored the gesture, their fingertips inches apart. "I'm so sorry," Caleb whispered, his voice breaking. "I should have been there. I should have." "Stop," Ethan said firmly. "This isn't your fault. It's them. My family." He explained the frame-up, the drugs, and Mark's role. Caleb's face hardened with every word, his jaw clenching. "They can't get away with this," Caleb said. "I'll talk to Sarah Bennett. We'll fight this together." Ethan managed a small smile. "Grandpa left me something, a trust fund, and a letter that might help." He slid the envelope's contents through the slot, and Caleb's eyes widened as he scanned the documents. "This is incredible," Caleb said. "Henry was looking out for you, even now." They talked until the guard called time, their words a quiet rebellion against the forces trying to tear them apart. Caleb promised to meet with Sarah the next day, and Ethan clung to that promise as he lay on his cot that night, staring at the ceiling. The next morning, Sarah Bennett arrived, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense demeanor. She laid out the case. The evidence was circumstantial but damaging. Mark's testimony, backed by their parents, painted Ethan as a troubled kid who'd fallen into drugs under Caleb's influence. The police had found the cocaine in Ethan's backpack, and the anonymous tip had come from a burner phone, untraceable. "But your grandfather's letter changes things," Sarah said, tapping the document. "It's not admissible in court yet, but it's enough to push for an investigation into your family's motives. We'll file for discovery and demand a closer look at the evidence." Ethan nodded, his throat tight. "What about bail?" Sarah's expression softened. "The trust fund covers it. We'll get you out soon, Ethan. But you need to prepare for what comes next. Your family's not going to back down." She was right. Days later, at the bail hearing, Ethan's parents sat in the courtroom, their faces stone cold. Mark was there too, avoiding Ethan's gaze. The judge, a stern older man, granted bail thanks to Sarah's arguments and the trust fund's resources. As Ethan stepped out of the courthouse, Caleb was waiting, pulling him into a tight embrace. "You're free," Caleb whispered, his voice thick with relief. "For now," Ethan said, glancing back at the courthouse. He knew this was only the beginning. His family had drawn a line, and he was on the wrong side of it. Back at their apartment, Ethan and Caleb pored over Henry's letter again. One line stood out. "If they ever try to break you, Ethan, remember the truth is your greatest weapon." Ethan didn't know how, but he was determined to uncover the truth and make his family pay for what they'd done. Freedom felt fragile, like a glass ornament teetering on the edge of a shelf. Ethan stood in their apartment, the familiar scent of Caleb's coffee grounding him, but the weight of the charges still loomed. He was out on bail, but the trial was weeks away, and his family's lies were a tightening noose. Sarah's strategy was clear: discredit the witnesses and challenge the evidence. She'd already hired a private investigator, Tom Reed, to dig into Mark's life. "If your brother's hiding something, we'll find it," she'd promised. Ethan wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at him. His family had the town's respect, pillars of the church, always quick with a smile and a donation, who believed they'd frame their own son. Caleb, ever the optimist, kept Ethan tethered to hope. They spent evenings planning their defense, curled up on the couch, their hands intertwined. One night, Caleb traced circles on Ethan's palm and said, "We're stronger than they think. They can't break us." Ethan wanted to believe that too, but fear crept in. What if the truth wasn't enough? What if the jury saw him as his parents did? A sinner, a disgrace. He pushed the thoughts away, focusing on Caleb's warmth, the way his presence made the world feel less hostile. A week later, Tom Reed called with a lead. "Your brother's been spending a lot of time at a bar on the edge of town," he said. "Shady place. I've got a hunch he's mixed up with some rough types." Ethan's pulse quickened. "You think he got the drugs from there?" "Maybe," Tom said. "I'm tailing him tonight. If he's dealing with anyone, I'll get proof." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker, imagining Mark slipping into some dive bar, making deals to ruin him. The thought made his stomach churn. Mark had always been the golden child, athletic, charming, the one their parents bragged about. But Ethan knew his brother's darker side, the temper, the need for control. If Mark was behind this, he'd covered his tracks well. The next day, Tom delivered. He'd caught Mark on camera, meeting a known dealer named Vince at the bar. The footage was grainy, but it showed Mark handing over cash for a small package. It wasn't enough to prove the frame-up, but it was a crack in Mark's perfect facade. Sarah pounced on the evidence. "We'll use this to pressure the prosecutor," she said. "If Mark's tied to dealers, his testimony's tainted. We might even get the charges dropped." But Ethan's parents doubled down. They held a press conference outside their church, tears in their eyes, claiming Ethan's lifestyle had led him astray. Linda clutched her cross necklace, her voice trembling. "We just want our son back," she said to the cameras. "We're praying for him." The town ate it up. Ethan's phone buzzed with hateful messages from old classmates, neighbors, even people he barely knew. "Faggot druggie," one text read. "You're a disgrace to Willow Creek." Caleb deleted the messages before Ethan could see them all, but the damage was done. "We need to fight back," Caleb said, his voice fierce. "Let's tell our side. Go public." Ethan hesitated. Exposing his family meant airing their ugliness for the world to see. But staying silent meant letting their lies win. He nodded. "Okay, let's do it." They contacted a local journalist, Emily Chun, who'd written about social justice issues. She met them at a coffee shop, her notebook open, her eyes kind but sharp. Ethan told her everything: his coming out, his family's rejection, the frame-up, Henry's letter. Caleb held his hand under the table, a quiet anchor. Emily's article hit the local paper the next day, titled "A Family's Betrayal, One Man's Fight for Justice." It detailed Ethan's story, Henry's trust fund, and the suspicious footage of Mark. The town buzzed with whispers, some supportive, others venomous. Ethan's parents called it slander, but cracks were forming in their story. One evening, as Ethan and Caleb walked home from the grocery store, a truck screeched past, someone yelling slurs from the window. A bottle shattered at their feet, glass skittering across the pavement. Caleb pulled Ethan close, his voice steady. "They're scared. We're getting to them." Ethan nodded, but his heart raced. The truth was their weapon, but it was also a target on their backs. As they climbed the stairs to their apartment, Ethan glanced at Caleb, his rock, his reason to keep fighting. He wouldn't let his family win, not when he had so much worth fighting for. The trial loomed like a storm cloud, dark and inevitable. Ethan spent his days with Sarah, preparing his testimony, while Caleb worked with Emily to keep their story in the public eye. The town was divided. Some rallied behind Ethan, moved by his courage, while others clung to his parents' narrative, painting him as a lost soul corrupted by sin. Tom Reed's investigation deepened. He tracked down Vince, the dealer from the bar, and leaned on him for answers. Vince, facing his own charges, cracked under pressure. "Mark Harper paid me to plant the drugs," he admitted in a recorded statement. Said it was to teach his brother a lesson. Sarah played the recording for Ethan and Caleb in her office, her eyes gleaming. "This is it," she said. "With Vince's testimony and your grandfather's letter, we can dismantle their case." Ethan's relief was tempered by pain. His own brother had paid to ruin him, all because he loved Caleb. The betrayal cut deeper than he'd expected, a wound that wouldn't heal easily. Caleb squeezed his hand. "We're close, Ethan. They can't hide anymore." But the Harpers weren't done. The day before the trial, Ethan's mother showed up at their apartment, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. "Ethan, please," she said, her voice shaking. "Drop this. Come back to us. We can fix this as a family." Ethan stared at her, his heart twisting. For a moment, he saw the mother who'd tucked him in as a child, who'd sung him lullabies. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone who'd let hate poison her love. "You framed me," he said, his voice low. "You lied to destroy me. There's no fixing that." Linda's face crumpled, but she didn't deny it. She left without another word, and Ethan collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down his face. Caleb held him, whispering, "You're stronger than them. You always have been." The trial began in a packed courtroom. Ethan sat beside Sarah, his palms sweaty, as the prosecutor laid out the case against him. Mark took the stand first, his voice steady as he repeated the lies. Ethan's drug problem, his dangerous boyfriend, the backpack he'd seen Ethan hide. The jury watched, some nodding, others skeptical. Then Sarah cross-examined. She played Vince's recording, and the courtroom buzzed. Mark's face paled, his confident facade cracking. "That's not true," he stammered, but Sarah pressed harder, revealing his bar meetings, the cash exchanges. Ethan testified next, his voice steady despite his nerves. He told the jury about his family's rejection, the frame-up, Henry's letter. He spoke of Caleb, their love, and the life they wanted to build. "I'm not a criminal," he said. "I'm just a man trying to live honestly." Caleb's testimony followed, his words raw and heartfelt. He described Ethan's kindness, their quiet moments together, the pain of seeing him targeted. "They didn't just attack Ethan," Caleb said, his voice breaking. "They attacked us, our love, our right to exist." The jury deliberated for 2 days. Ethan and Caleb waited in the courthouse hallway, hands clasped, barely speaking. When the verdict came, Ethan's heart stopped. "Not guilty," the foreman said, and the room erupted. Caleb pulled Ethan into his arms, both of them crying, as Sarah smiled triumphantly. Outside, reporters swarmed, but Ethan only saw Caleb's face, lit with relief and love. They'd won, but the victory was bittersweet. His family had shown their true colors, and the town would never be the same. As they walked away, Ethan felt a weight lift, but another settle in its place. The fight wasn't over, not yet. That night, they read Henry's letter again, its words a beacon. The truth is your greatest weapon. Ethan knew what he had to do. He'd expose his family's lies, not just for himself, but for others who faced the same hate. With Caleb by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. The verdict was a turning point, but it didn't erase the scars. Ethan and Caleb returned to their apartment, the quiet space now a sanctuary and a battleground. The town's whispers followed them. Some called Ethan a hero, others a troublemaker. His parents and Mark had retreated, their reputations tarnished, but Ethan knew they wouldn't forgive him for exposing them. Sarah pushed for a civil suit against Mark, using Vince's testimony and the trust fund's resources. "We can hold him accountable," she said. "Make sure he can't hurt anyone else." Ethan agreed, but his heart wasn't in vengeance. He wanted healing, not more pain. Caleb suggested they leave Willow Creek. "Start fresh," he said one night as they lay in bed, the moonlight spilling through the window. "Somewhere we can just be us." Ethan considered it, but something held him back. His grandfather's legacy wasn't just the trust fund. It was the courage to stand tall. Henry had fought for justice his whole life, and Ethan felt a duty to do the same. "I want to stay," he said finally. "Not for them, but for kids like me who feel alone." Caleb smiled, his eyes shining. "Then we'll stay. Together." They began working with Emily Chun, who'd started a nonprofit for LGBTQ youth in Ohio. Ethan shared his story at community events, his voice growing stronger with each speech. He spoke of love, resilience, and the power of truth. Young people approached him afterward, some in tears, thanking him for giving them hope. One evening, at a fundraiser, Ethan spotted his mother in the crowd. She stood at the back, her face unreadable. After his speech, she approached, her hands trembling. "I was wrong," she whispered. "I let fear and faith blind me. I'm sorry, Ethan." He wanted to believe her, but trust was a fragile thing. "I hope you mean that," he said, "but I need time." She nodded, tears in her eyes, and walked away. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a start. Mark faced charges for his role in the frame-up, and the town's perception shifted. The church lost members, and Ethan's parents kept a low profile. Ethan didn't gloat. He focused on building a life with Caleb, on creating a community where love wasn't a crime. Months later, they stood by the lake where they'd shared so many quiet moments. The sunset painted the water gold, just like the image Ethan had envisioned during the darkest days. Caleb took his hand, their fingers lacing together. "We made it," Caleb said, his voice soft. Ethan nodded, his heart full. "Because of you and Grandpa." Henry's will had saved him, not just through money, but through the belief it carried, that Ethan was enough, just as he was. The trust fund funded scholarships for LGBTQ youth, a legacy Ethan and Caleb vowed to carry forward. As they walked home, hand in hand, Ethan felt a peace he hadn't known before. His family had tried to break him, but love had won. Not just his love for Caleb, but the love of a grandfather who'd seen his worth, and the love of a community learning to change. The truth had been his weapon, and it had set him free.